This here is a PC that I picked up for under $50 in a recent used parts hunt. Now, the person who sold it to me told me that it was working 100% and had no issues. However, upon bringing it home, I noticed that the PC wouldn't even turn on. And also, once I started testing out some of the components individually, I found that not only did I have a faulty Z68 motherboard, but I also had a faulty graphics card that was showing lines when I tried to turn the PC on, and it also gave out an error code 43, which essentially means that we don't have a motherboard and we also don't have a graphics card for that under $50 price point. However, I'm not going to let that deter me from putting together one of the cheapest budget gaming PCs I can put together for the money. And here's where I managed to salvage a 500 watt power supply from this build. Surprisingly, although it was really dirty, it still works. There's a CPU cooler that still works. There's an i7-2600 and also 16 gigabytes of DDR3 memory. Now, as for the case, that has no side panels on both front and rear, though I do have a bit of a plan. So what I'm gonna do is go hit the Yesmobile, AKA my car, and go look for a couple of deals to try and patch up what we have left with this PC and hopefully make some magic happen. So let's go hit the road.
You want to get yourself a cheap, legit Windows 10 Pro key license? Then today's video sponsor SCD Keys has you covered. For as little as $14, when you use that coupon code BFTYC, you can get Windows activated right now. Links in the description below.
So now we just got finished up at the dumpster, and what we got here was actually a pretty good piece of kit that should be able to get us through this build. So I just basically went through the dumpster. I found this Dell, I think it's an H61 motherboard. It looks like a second gen board, and hopefully that will work. And then while I was there, I just asked them if I could pick up a dirty old banged up case that actually had the side panels. So they had this Cougar case lying around. And then also I asked them if they had any drives that they were willing to sell us. And they had a 120 gigabyte hard drive and also a 2 terabyte drive. So we got all this for 15 bucks, which in USD terms would be about 10 US dollars. So that was an absolute bargain, providing the motherboard works. They didn't give me a guarantee on it, but a lot of the times I pick up stuff from the dumpster and it does work in terms of motherboards. I've actually got a pretty good success rate. But as for the drives, they have tested both those drives out and they do work. So we got an absolute bargain from the tip. But of course, we're still gonna go get one more piece of the puzzle, which we've now just found a graphics card listing for an RX 480, and they're asking 100 Aussie dollars for it. I put in an offer as 60 and they accepted. And I don't know if it's the 4 or 8 gigabyte model because they don't say, but when we get there, we'll suss it out. And we just picked up this RX 480, and I actually don't know if it's a 4 gigabyte or 8 gigabyte yet. The person who bought it said they bought it years and years ago, but upgraded to a 1080 Ti, and they had it in their closet all this time. And it looks like they've barely used it. And that is just an awesome sign. Hopefully it does work 100%, but judging by the person's demeanor and just the condition of the card and how it looks, I think I scored an absolute bargain here. And now we've got all these parts laid out, ready for a build. It is time to do, however, one of the most important steps with used parts, especially parts that are this dirty, and that is we have to clean them out. So we're gonna start working on this case here, which is filthy, but also while we're doing that, we're going to be putting some of these parts in an ultrasonic cleaner and then cleaning those parts out and making them look as brand new as possible. So this power supply is absolutely filthy. The motherboard and the attached CPU cooler, that's also really dirty too. So we're gonna chuck them in the ultrasonic cleaner for around about 12 minutes at 60 degrees. And one thing, before you put any parts in water or an ultrasonic cleaner, make sure there is no power left in those parts. So what we do here, with the power supply is we have a power supply tester, but also if you don't have a power supply tester, you can just make sure the power is unplugged from the unit itself, and make sure the motherboard, you can try and turning on the motherboard for a good couple of minutes and make sure those parts are drained. In this case, we've got the power supply tester that drained the power supply completely. So I'm pretty confident we can put these in the ultrasonic cleaner and then have them turn out looking like they're brand new. And while we are doing this part, that also gives us a bit of time to clean out this case and make that look good as well. Now, for the graphics card, the CPU, the SSD hard drive, and the RAM, we don't need to clean these out. They look like they're actually in really good condition, especially the GPU. I was shocked by how good or how immaculate looking this thing is. So I'm gonna take the person's word for it who I bought it off and just think that they haven't used it at all pretty much. And hopefully that ends up giving out still good temperatures, but we can save a bit of time without having to clean that because it just looks like it's in such good condition. So this case is now looking like it's brand spanking new. It's shining, everything is good to go. And also what we're going to do is add some little final touches, and that is just some cheap green LED fans that connect via Molex. This is just going to give it some LED bling, and these cost about $10 for the 3-pack. So it's really going to add a bit of character to this build. But also the ultrasonic cleaner has finished cleaning those parts. However, they are still wet. So we're going to have to dry them down. And then also, very crucial phase here is apply some multi-purpose spray, which is also going to get rid of any slight remaining water, as well as protect it from getting any future rust and lubricating the parts. So let's get into this final cleaning phase. And we are now finally at the stage where we're ready to build the PC. Everything looks like it works. We do have some error messages here. However, with the hard drive fan failure, the front input output cable and the hard drive not found, we should be able to fix those messages after we plug this build up and connect everything. However, I have also put on a jumper on the power switch because the Dell power switch on the motherboards have a 5-pin header when all you really need for your power switch is 2 pins. However, you can get around this by inserting a CMOS jumper on the middle 2 pins. However, at first I was nervous because we weren't getting a signal, and I put it down to just changing the box because the other box had like sticky tape and all this other stuff on it, which you got to be careful what you place your motherboard on. Usually in the past, a box has always been fine to place a motherboard on. However, this time around, it wasn't the case. So we changed the box just to test everything out, make sure this PC is working before we build it, because there's nothing worse than trying to diagnose problems if you've already finished the PC and built it all up. But everything here is working 100% now, which I'm really happy with. Even this banger power supply that we put through the deep clean ultrasonic cleaner. And yeah, it's time to put together a magical masterpiece and see if we can play Warzone 2. So this PC right here actually presented some problems after I built it, and the first problem was the front I/O message on this particular Dell motherboard was so that my traditional method in the past, I've shorted pins 7 and 8 out, but that didn't work on this board. I actually had to do something really janky and short 2 different pins, one in a diagonal manner and then the other in a horizontal type manner. And that actually resulted in the message going away. However, after we completed that problem, we had these 2 green LED fans. They were dim as opposed to the one that was plugged in via Molex. So how we got around this was these fans. This is the first time I've actually ever needed this. I plugged in the 3-pin system fan to the board and then actually plugged in the Molex as well. So it was being powered by 2 different connectors, and that got rid of the message, but also made it so these LED fans are running at full speed, and also the LEDs are running at full brightness. And now that's super important when it comes to selling a PC. You have to have your LEDs up at 100%, because if they're not, then people aren't going to be interested in your computer. And of course your FPS may even tank as well if your LEDs aren't running at 100%. Though with those 2 issues aside, we are now in Windows and we've loaded up Inspector, disabled the Meltdown Inspector patches to improve performance just a little bit, since this i7-2600 is going to need all the performance it can get. And then for the RX 480, since it is a blower style cooler, we decided to undervolt this, and since it's a older version of a graphics card like this, you can actually undervolt with MSI Afterburner, and that's exactly what we did here. We managed to drop it down around 80 millivolts with the same speeds, the same clock speeds, and also we managed to raise the memory speeds roughly 100 megahertz, and that's given us now more performance and using less power. However, we've also set manually the fan speeds to 60%, because on the default fan speeds, this thing's just going up to like 85, 90 degrees. It's ridiculous. So this thing's hovering around 60 degrees now. It's using a lot less power than it was before, and it's just going to run a lot better. So the first game we are testing out here is Warzone 2, Call of Duty. So the actual multiplayer is free to play, and we're going straight into it here, and we're getting on average around 50 to 60 FPS here. So really, I'm surprised that this PC that we put together for around $100 US can play the latest Call of Duty Warzone 2 with decent FPS. I mean, it's not going to be the smoothest experience, but it's still going to give you a really enjoyable experience. If you've got a 60 Hertz monitor, it's going to couple in great with that. And the power consumption isn't too shabby on this RX 480, especially now that it's undervolted. So really impressed with what we're seeing here so far, but let's test out one more title. So next up here, we've got Apex Legends, and we've got this at high and medium settings at 1080p. Now, this automatically looks like it's running pretty smooth. So 1080p, not too shabby at all, and even in the jump sequence, nothing's really stuttering. So the i7-2600 can still get up and boogie. Now, the good thing about this is our GPU is pegged at 100%, meaning that our CPU's still got a little bit of headroom left. But let's kind of see what FPS we can get in this title at these settings. 'Cause you were always on my Look guys, it's the mouse, okay? It's not me, it's the mouse. A good gamer always blames his gear. And after all that cleaning, tuning, and gaming, we finally have a PC that is a smooth operator, all for a little over $100 US. Now, I was hoping to come in under that $100 price point, but unfortunately, when you're dealing with used parts, sometimes you'll get into a situation where someone will tell you something works, you get it home and it doesn't work. In this case, not only did we have not one part work in that initial PC, two parts didn't work, and that was the graphics card and also the motherboard. The motherboard was just completely gone. It was like no signal at all. So we had to work around that and turn those negatives into positives, where we took out that i7-2600, the DDR3 memory, and we used that power supply tester to see that the 500 watt power supply was still okay and good to go. Though that bad luck out of the way, one thing I'll tell you guys about used PC parts when you're in it long enough, there's also bad luck, but there's also good luck, and that's what we came into after that bad luck happened, where we had the dumpster pickup for 15 bucks. We got an SSD, a 2 terabyte hard drive, which worked fine too, and then we also got that Dell motherboard, which we did take a gamble on with the Dell motherboard, but it did work out in the end, especially after we cleaned it up, and then we did that weird hack where we got rid of all those error messages, which on this 390 series, if you guys are getting into the Dell 390 series, which is basically second and third gen on Intel older CPUs, you're going to have to do a different pin shorting with those little short CMOS jumpers. And it's different to what I've done in the past with the 4th gen boards. So if you've been pulling your hairs out or you've been sort of confused on how to get these 390 series boards working, there's actually a weird diagonal short in there that ended up doing the job. So hopefully that helps some people out if you guys are looking to build a gaming PC for a strict budget and you don't know how to get rid of those error messages. But then after that, we had the case, which had both the side panels. And the reason I need the side panels is because I'm going to sell this PC on after I'm done with it. So we couldn't, unfortunately, use that case that I originally bought in the start build, because that was just going to be completely not acceptable for when I go to resell the PC. And it also just was so banged up and looked terrible that this one that came in here, although it was really dirty, it wasn't banged up. And so we applied some of that Tech Yes loving and the magic and cleaned it up and made it look like brand new. And so I was really happy on the finished product, but I was also, in hindsight, really happy about the RX 480 and that we got that over the GTX 950. And actually some really good news on top of that is that we got the 8GB model and it wasn't just the 4GB model. So that was even better news than I expected. So the good luck definitely balanced out all in one video here over that bad luck that we initially got. But another thing is too, the performance of the RX 480, much better than GTX 950. The GTX 960, I believe, is the minimum spec requirement for Warzone 2, but the 950 is close enough. I thought we could have got away with that. But then the RX 480 is also above that of the RX 470, which is the minimum requirement for the AMD side. However, I believe the RX 480 did a great job at 1080p, giving out a smooth experience, as opposed to, say, NVIDIA, you might want to get something like a GTX 1060, which is similar in performance to the RX 480s. The performance of Warzone 2 aside, going into Apex Legends was when this thing showed that it can play esports titles with really smooth FPS. Those 1% and 0.1% lows were extremely impressive, and the average FPS was over 100, and this was at medium and high settings. So if you want to play different titles to Warzone 2, you're going to get even better FPS and an even better experience. For instance, Fortnite, Dota 2, I know if it can play Apex Legends, I know it'll play those games as well with absolutely fine FPS. Though in the end, we also managed to make this thing look a little bit more aesthetically pleasing with those green LED fans. And in the end, this transformation going from that scrapped, neglected, totally neglected PC and transforming that into something that just looks the part and plays games for that extremely low budget. I know you guys, this is what you come to Tech Yes City for, a lot of you guys, and I hope you enjoyed this transformation here today. And what I'm going to do from here on in with this PC is add a monitor, a cheap keyboard and mouse to it, and then sell it as a combo for someone looking to get into PC gaming. Hopefully they will enjoy that and I make a little bit of money for all the risks that I've took. And with that aside, do let us know in the comment section below what you think of today's transformation here. Love reading your thoughts and opinions as always, just like this question of the day here, which comes from Wolf Shanes. And they ask, I learned one thing from this video: Aussies drive Fords. And so they're talking about the recent used parts hunt we did. And I'll put the link up here where we got this PC, or actually the parts, the remnants of this PC in that video. But I also got a car as soon as I came back to Australia, and that was a Ford Focus. So you guys have been talking a lot about this car on Twitter and also in the comments section. And it's just a cheap runabout car. Though you guys kept asking about the Stinger, I sold the Stinger, and that was when I went over to Japan. I sort of had an inkling that the used car market, the prices were going to drop off, and keeping the Stinger in Australia, not driving it, it was just being put to waste. So I decided to sell that, and I got pretty much back what I paid for it and drove it for 2 full years. And I ran that thing pretty hard for those 2 years as well. The Stinger was an amazing car, but now coming back, I'm just looking to be a little bit more conservative and save the money I can for my boys' future. So that's one thing there. But in terms of Aussies driving Fords, yeah, they certainly do. Over in Australia, there's this big thing with Ford versus Holden. And I'm not going to go into it in this video, but as long as I get a good car and it can drive well, that's all. And the Ford Focus is doing that for me. Just people have been talking about the transmission on it. It is an auto. And I do believe one of my friends is a mechanic, and he just told me, just when you take your foot off the brake, just wait a second. So there's kind of like some input lag on the Ford Focus, so on the auto. So you just got to wait a second, let it kick in gear, and then drive it. And the gearbox and the clutch especially should last a little bit longer than usual. Anyhow, hope that answers that question, and I'll catch you guys in another tech video very soon. If you stayed this far and you're enjoying that Tech Yes content, then be sure to hit that sub button and also ring that bell. Get the content as soon as it drops, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace out for now. Bye.